Today, I'm going to be testing all the most popular visors on my Riddell Speedflex. I'm going to test how easy they are to install, how easy they are to take out, and how well they fit. Now, if you know about our visor collection, we do have a ton of crazy colors when it comes to our visors, but for this comparison, I tried to get them all in clear. A couple I couldn't, but I tried my best. Now, for this demonstration, I picked one of the most common, most open face masks you can get for this Riddell Speedflex. By going with this style face mask, I'm giving every visor the best chance of succeeding. So the first three we're going to look at are going to be the flat visors, and for this category, we have three. We have the NXTRND Visor 1, the Nike Vapor Eyeshield, and the Under Armour Adult Football Visor. Slipping the visor under is really easy. In fact, it's so easy it actually almost popped out the top on this one. But once the visor is in place, you can kind of just hold it, put the screw in from the back, put one of the nuts on, and that's really much as easy as it gets. Now, looking at the fit here, it's okay, right? It's what you're gonna expect from a lot of the flat visors. They're gonna fit in there well. They fit a lot of different helmets, but they're just not gonna fit anything perfect. You can see here on the gap is pretty significant on the bottom, but that's gonna be pretty standard across all of your flat visors. Taking it off is even easier. The visor literally almost falls out of this thing. Take the clips, pop them off as well, and you're basically done. Overall, this will be the quickest install, but you do sacrifice some of the fit and quality of some of the other ones out there. Next up, we have the Nike Vapor Eyeshield. Now this one is going to be pretty easy to slip under, but the longer tabs do make it a lot more tricky. The bigger issue with this one is actually going to be the visor clips. So as you can see here, these visor clips really don't fit over the face mask. Well, I talked to Devin about this, and he said the best way is actually to take the rubber pieces off, and that way it kind of fits on it. It should come out of the box ready to fit one of the most popular face masks on the most popular helmet. Once you did get these clips over the bars, on that point, they didn't even like slide around. They were very sticky, so it made it really hard to get them in place and ready for the visor to get installed. With the larger tabs and the tight clips, this is definitely one of the tougher ones to get on and get in place, especially compared to NXTRND. But once it's in the right spot, the thumb screws are kind of small and a little bit triangular. I definitely preferred the longer and thumb screws that were more shaped like a gear. I found it easier to get more turns with each turn of your wrist, if that makes sense. Overall, install took a really long time to get this thing in place, and those thumb screws do not make it easy. Looking at the fit of this thing, I think the tabs are way too big and kind of stuck out too far. So from an aesthetic perspective, I think that part isn't great. The overall gap around the face mask is also not great either. This thing was a mess. It's definitely probably the bottom of the list today. Taking off the thumb screws should have been really easy, but I actually got them stuck between the mask and the visor. Kind of got wedged in place, so it took me a really long time to get this thing off. Next time, I would definitely try and make sure I get the visor out of there first before I even touch those thumb screws, but being a flat visor, it did pop out really easy at the end. Kind of my fault it didn't pop out easy, but overall I still think there's a ton of issues with this visor. Next one up is going to be the last flat visor. This is going to be the Under Armour Adult Football Visor, and this one we have in like a silver chrome colorway. Now this one's actually kind of shorter than the other two, which did make it a little bit easier to pop up and get it installed quicker. Under Armour's clips are a lot different because they don't really wrap around the bars. It's kind of like a sandwich style, so you do have to hold it from both ends when you are putting it in. Here I did have to get a little tricky with how I'm holding it to get the visor in place and hold the clip at the same time. Once you do get it in place, the thumb screws are more like a nut on the back, so they don't actually have the threads on them. The threads are on the other side, which is kind of backwards from everyone else. They're very quick to take on and off. Looking at the fit, it sits well behind the bars, but doesn't really hug it. I do like the size of the tabs, but the fit against the mask is pretty big. Taking it apart, the clips come off really quick, which is nice. However, the Under Armour visor is slightly wider than the rest of them, so I found getting it out, again, it kind of got wedged in place. I don't think that's really the fault of the visor. I think it's just I was using the wrong technique, so it did take longer than expected, but I think on the second run through, I would be able to get this thing off a lot quicker. Overall, for fit of the flat category, I'd go number 1 NXTRND, number 2 Under Armour, and number 3 by far is going to be Nike. Next, we're going to be looking at the bubbled visors, and here we have 4 different contenders. Again, first up, we're going to do the NXTRND Visor 2. Now this will have the same clips as the last visor, so you definitely want to get those on first before putting the visor in. The visor slipped under the face mask really easy, but I found it wanted to kind of sit way too far back, and you can tell it wasn't really made for this helmet. I had to really hold the visor in place and kind of pinch it with my thumb against the face mask to kind of get it in the spot it should be in to sit against the face mask. However, you can tell it was really squeezing the plastic down and really just not made to fit this helmet whatsoever. It was constantly fighting me, and that meant getting the clips installed kind of made it more of like a two-man operation, and I found it really tricky, and it did take me a little longer to get it on. Once I got the clips lined up, they were a little more tricky to get on, but I did get one on pretty quick. Even now with one clip completely installed, you can see how far back this visor is sitting on here, so basically the entire time it was fighting me like it didn't want to go on. Now looking at the fit on this, it actually did fit quite nice, but that's not because it's made for it. That's because I kind of pushed it into place and had it fit on there. So the plastic is under a little bit of tension, which I don't really think is going to be a good idea going into game with that plastic not in the form it's supposed to be in. I can't say it'll crack or break if it does get hit, but that plastic is under tension, so I think it is more likely that that does happen in a game. You can also see here that the clips are angled in this weird way, and I think that's a testament to how this is really just kind of slightly off. The gap at the bottom is a lot better than the flat visors, but I think we can definitely do better. Taking it apart, you can see once I take these visor clips off, the visor kind of springs back in place where it naturally wants to be, and from there it kind of slips out really easy. Overall, tough to get on quick, you can take it off really fast, and the fit is just okay. Next up is going to be the Oakley Legacy visor. Now I put this one on here because it's kind of directly competing against the NXTRND visor in that neither of them are made to fit the Riddell Speedflex. You see, the Riddell Speedflex is kind of more of a narrow shape where something like a SHOT F7 is a little bit wider. So to combat this, Oakley came out with two visors. They came out with the Oakley Pro Visor and the Oakley Legacy visor. The Legacy is for everything else, and the Oakley Pro Visor, mostly worn in the NFL, is made specifically for the Speedflex. Us and Oakley do not recommend putting an Oakley Legacy visor on a Speedflex, but I will show you it for demonstration purposes because I know people out there will do it. The first thing that I really like about both Oakley visors is going to be their quick release clips. They kind of fit over top of it, but they're not really like a tight connection, so they're really easy to get in place and they don't take a lot of hands to move. Overall, I think they actually hit the best of both worlds between all the different kind of visor clips. Now here you can see the visor really wants to sit farther back and you really have to compress it in place to try and get it to fit properly. Just look here how far back this thing naturally wants to sit. But it's going to be the same issue like you had with the NXTRND, so get the visor in place, put one clip on, compress it against the face mask, and then put the other clip on. Again, doing this will put the visor under tension, and I don't think it is good for the visor or to wear in a game like this, but you can do it nonetheless. Overall, it does look like it fits okay, but the gap here is still pretty significant, so I don't think it is one of the better options. Looking at the fit here, you can see it does wrap around it nicely like all bubble visors do, but it's really not made for this, and the gap here at the bottom is still pretty significant. Taking it off is by far the easiest part. You literally just take off the screws and the visor pops out nice. Clips open up and you're done. Overall, you can make it work, but there are two better options. Next one we're going to be looking at is Oakley's solution to this problem, the Oakley Pro Visor. The Pro Visor was made specifically for the Speedflex, and you can just see here how much narrower it is. The installation of this is also super easy. It fits underneath, the clips go on, and you can tell that this visor was made specifically for this helmet. The visor stays where you want, and you just add the screws, and you're basically done. This is really a one-hand job if you needed it to be. Install, it took off about 12 seconds because I was fixing my light off camera when the timer had already started. Looking at the fit of this thing, it is the best fitting visor by far. It wraps around the face mask really nicely. There is still a slight bit of gap around it, but overall the best fitting visor so far. This visor looks great and is perfect from almost every single angle. The take apart of this visor did get corrupted in the footage, unfortunately, but it's gonna be the same as the Legacy. It pops out really easy. So far, this is the best visor we've seen. Now, the only one that can rival the Oakley Legacy is gonna be the SHOC 0G visor. And that 0G stands for zero gap, and this visor was made specifically for the Speedflex as well. So first off, these clips are way different than any other clips on the market. These are more like a rubber gasket that kind of wraps around and then it has a thumb screw built in. Now, sometimes this rubber is easier because it's more malleable and it's easier to wrap around, but sometimes also the plastic and the little bit of rigidity does make it easier to handle, so kind of pros and cons with both. Now, this visor does slip under really easy, but it is slightly larger than the Oakley Pro Visor, and it does take a little more massaging to kind of get it into place and get it centered. Once it is centered, the thumb screws go on the back, and they do take a lot longer than any other one, mostly just because the threads on it are substantially longer than any other brand. So this one is going to take you a lot longer to install, but it's not really tricky. It's just, a little more time consuming. All right, now looking at the fit, this fit is unreal from every single angle here. It wraps around the face mask really nicely. From the top, there's no gap, and from the bottom, zero gap, just as they talk about. Easily by far the best fitting visor that we have tested all day. Now taking it off, again, it's just as time consuming just because of how long these screws are, so it takes a bit to get them off. But once they are, the visor just slips out. The rubber thumb screws kind of unfold and you can pop them off that way, and then you're done. Overall, this visor beats Oakley as far as fit goes, but it does take a little bit longer to get off. So kind of pros and cons of both depending on what you're looking for. On a sideline at a game, if you need to pop a visor off really quick, the Oakley Pro will definitely be a better bet. But if you're going for overall fit and you don't see yourself taking off anytime soon, the 0G might be a better bet for you. There you guys go, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Which helmet do you want us to do next? Leave it in the comments down below.